Can you smell it? Spring is finally in the air, especially here in the Pacific Northwest. So I thought, why not bring it back to the forest? Anyways, I know you are here for the functional training workout, so let's get into that. I know many of you, much like myself, struggle to find time to exercise or get a movement practice in throughout the week. And what I find is even finding 15 to 20 minutes a few times a week is a lot better than not doing anything at all. So what we're gonna cover in this video is the 5 exercises that I think are the most bang for your buck in terms of time, efficiency, as well as kind of covering the foundations of motions that you'd find yourself doing on a day-to-day basis. So without further ado, let's jump straight into this one. All right, so for the first exercise, we're gonna be working through some core work as well as some breathing. So find yourself a nice patch of forest ground or carpet at home. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the arms, and I want you to think about taking the back of your hand. And you're gonna try to locate the lower portion of your ribs, because this is where we're gonna primarily try to breathe into and try to create space from. So what we're gonna try to prioritize is first breathing kind of into our lower rib cage here, kind of walking that up the spine, and then you're gonna exhale deeply on the front side as much as you can. So it's kind of like we're creating space on the back side as we kind of create a little bit of compression on this front side. So I'm gonna take my hands, the back of my hands, not my palms, and you can see I'm in this internal rotation with my shoulders as well as my arms. And now I'm just gonna come onto my back. And what I'm gonna start to do here is I'm just gonna focus on my breathing. So I'm gonna take my inhale into my lower ribs. I'm gonna exhale. And I'm just gonna try to repeat that cycle where I'm trying to continuously create expansion on the back side of my ribs. And then I'm gonna make sure that I close this off so I'm not flaring the ribs or I'm not getting anything excessively open here. And the more pressure that I start to build, the more expansion you're ultimately gonna start to feel through your abdominal wall here. Once you kind of get the gist of that, keeping your hands here so that you can maintain the pressure, you're gonna lift the legs. I'm gonna again breathe into the lower portion of my spine. And then I'm just gonna begin to work a knee extension going out. And you can see I'm getting a little bit of shakes here because I'm trying to avoid any type of excessive hyperextension again when my ribs are gonna open up this way. I'm gonna really try to keep that closed off. So once my leg comes out, I'm keeping that closed off, and then I just reset back to neutral. Take that back out, and reset back to neutral. I would work through anywhere between probably about 5 repetitions on either side. And the idea here is you're not trying to keep the lower back necessarily pressed into the ground. I see a lot of people make that mistake. It's more the lower portion of the rib cage where you're keeping that pressed down alongside the length pressure on the back side of the spine, as well as keeping the front side of the ribs closed off the whole time. All right, so for our next exercise, we're gonna be staying on the ground and we're gonna start to integrate the kind of corrective breathing and the core activation that we were working on in our previous exercise. And we're just gonna build on that. So I'm gonna take myself kind of into a side plank position. I'm gonna go from my ankles, so I'm gonna go from here. If you wanna make it easier, you can definitely just shorten it up and you can go from the knees as well. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna work a rotational side plank. So I'm gonna start with my elbow kind of right beside my ribs here. And what I'm gonna start to do is take my hips up. And instead of just taking my hips up like this and then resetting back down, I'm gonna think about kind of wrapping myself around. We're going into a slight rotation here as I come up. So I'm gonna go from this position. I'm gonna start to wrap myself around to my right. So I'm coming into my right side. And now I can really feel that right oblique grab. And then I'm just gonna reset my elbow as my hips come back down. And you can see my hips are slightly off the ground. I'm not coming all the way down, and that's gonna keep that oblique under a constant tension. And then I'm just gonna come up rotate. My shoulders are again in this slightly rounded position. That's gonna give me the length through the spine. And then I'm just gonna reset out of that. And from here, you can go for probably about 5 to 8 repetitions on either side. And then you can alternate and you can switch and go to the opposite side. Now, something to keep in mind as you're going through these is you are gonna wanna actively try to push through this elbow on the ground. That's gonna help to keep the shoulders stable, as well as the shoulder blades in a slight abduction, or where the scapulas are slightly away from the spine. And that's gonna avoid any of that compressatory tension that we might get through our shoulders. So I'm gonna actively press my elbow down alongside my ankle, or it would be your knees if you're doing that. And I'm gonna try to meet those two tensions just to where everything meets at that top position, all simultaneously. So everything is always moving in accordance with one another. At no point is one part of my body not moving as I'm going through this motion. Whew. And that's feeling good. That is gonna get our core plenty warm enough for the exercises that we have ahead. All right, so we are gonna do one more on the ground, and then we're gonna pop up to our feet. So for this one, we're gonna be working a variation of a push-up. It's gonna be a push-up row. So I'm gonna come into initially a high plank position. Now when I'm here, if you were activating your core properly, you should immediately feel that come online. You should feel everything around the rectus abdominis, your TVA and obliques already kind of come online just from being in that position. And then what I want you to start with is just go through an initial push-up first. So I'm gonna go slow down. There'll be a nice even press up. I would work through probably about 5 to 10 repetitions here. That's just gonna help to start to link things like the pecs and the abdominals together. And then once we have that, you can start to feel that link, then we're gonna start to add the row. So I'm gonna come down, and I'm gonna come up, and I go row. This is where I'm gonna be targeting that oblique, alongside even a little bit of lat and rhomboid on my right side here. I'm gonna reset, and then I'm going to alternate. Reset. Now, if you want to build on this, you can just start to go through the motion a little bit faster. So I'm trying to go through it just for control, make sure that I'm tensioning the right parts of my body. But if you want to start to make it more dynamic, you can certainly do that as well. And that is going to cover all the stuff we're going to do on the ground. I'm getting really nice and dirty here, so let's pop up to our feet. All right, so for this next one, we're going to work through a low lateral lunge. So these are 2 exercises that I've covered quite extensively in other videos, but we're going to try to combine them together. So if you're not familiar with how we do a lunge or how we do lateral movements, I'll leave some links in the description box below and you can check out those videos. So we're gonna kind of expedite that because this is about having the most bang for your buck. So we are going to initially just work through a lunge. So split stance, what I'm gonna do is have about 80% of my weight here. I'm gonna work through only a couple lunges. So I'm gonna go 1, then I'm gonna go 2. That's kind of just getting my upper body preloaded. And now I'm gonna stay low, and all I'm gonna do is just take a lateral step to my side, and I'm gonna do same thing. I'll work 1, 2, stay in my half lunge, and then I come over. Now that we've got things somewhat circulating in terms of blood flow, muscle activation, I'm gonna go down, stay low, and then I'm right over. What we're starting to do here is we're going to start to apply a little bit of hip stability, knee and ankle stability around all the musculature here, while we work through 2 different planes of motion. Really 3, but to make it easy, we're working through 2, which is my sagittal plane, back and forth, as well as my frontal plane, which is side to side. So I'm gonna pick the pace up here a little bit. Instead of stopping, see how I'm stopping and then coming down? Let's see if we can land right in that. Land right in that. Whew. You can see how I'm moving my shoulders, and that should remind you of what we were doing in the side plank before. Now what I like to do is almost sit in that tension just a little bit. I'm just kind of absorbing it. I'm gonna sit in the tension, kind of feel things load up, and then I'm gonna use that to spring myself back the opposite way. And that is killer. That will work your your legs in a multitude of different ways. It's a lot more effective, I find, than just doing a static lunge or just doing walking lunges or squats. Just because you're combining so many different things together, it is a little bit more advanced. So it's not necessarily going to be the starting point. You can break those up. But again, if you're looking for the most efficient and bang for your buck in terms of an exercise, then that is certainly going to be a good option. Whew, legs are feeling that from the previous exercise. So for our last one, we're going to be working pivot hooks. So we're essentially going to work on transferring weight distribution from one foot to the other while we kind of rhythmically or elastically load our body through a little bit of T-spine rotation, and as we kind of work our shoulders dynamically from one side to the other. So if you've been around the channel, you know our arm swings. It's going to be kind of similar to that, but I'm going to keep the one arm close this time instead of opening it up, and then I'm going to come a little bit higher with my elbow. So what that is going to look like, so again, I'm going to have most of my weight on this left foot, and I just want you to work a hook coming over this left side. So my right arm, I'm going to hook, and then I'm just going to come back to this leg. And what I'm doing here is I'm starting to link things like my hamstring, my glute, my adductor, pec, kind of everything through my upper body, really. And I'm just stretching it and dynamically loading it through this one side. This doesn't have to be crazy fast. You can literally go from here over, or you can make it a little bit more dynamic, where you can see I'm introducing a little bit of a rhythm to this. So I'm just kind of pivoting off that back leg. Once you get about 10 reps on that one side, I'm going to come over to the other. I'll do the same thing here. And I'm trying to move both shoulders pretty dynamically. So you can see I'm working a little bit of a hook here. It's not too big, but I'm kind of going into an internal rotation so that then I can pull myself into it. Because those two mechanisms will kind of synchronize or synergize off of one another. Now, once you get the gist of this on both sides, that feels really good to kind of open everything up on the side of the body there. Once you get the gist of it, what we can do is we can alternate from one side to the other. So I can go pivot, pivot. And again, this arm is coming almost all the way over here, so that then I can pull with my hip, and then I'm through. Then I'm through. And if you're a boxer, or if you've ever done a boxing class where you're kind of throwing hooks or anything, it's a very similar mechanic where you're going through the motion with the shoulder, with the hips, and everything is really similar to that cross from one side to the other. And I just find the way that this kind of connects and links my shoulders to my legs to be very beneficial. Whoa, it's really low there. To be very beneficial for dynamically stretching my whole body, instead of me just kind of passively doing, say, like something like this I'm stretching my tricep and my lat and things on my side here. I'm going through it a little bit more dynamically, and I'm starting to integrate the full system, which is something that we're big proponents of. We don't always want to work in isolation. It's not that that is a bad thing, but we just want to start to think about how that links to the bigger picture and how we can apply that to a relative motion. Now, the last exercise doesn't really require any instruction because it's more a lifestyle tip, and that is to do daily walking. I find if I can get a 15 or 20, even a 30-minute walk in, I find that to be of more benefit than almost doing the exercises that I did previously. But it's not that I want to discount those, but the idea is as we're in exercise, we're preparing our body for things like walking, things like picking up groceries, picking up our children, reaching overhead to the cookie jar. Just kidding. You shouldn't be reaching for the cookie jar. But we should be getting our body prepared for the things that we will find ourselves doing on a day-to-day basis. And that's really all the exercises were that we were doing before, was just a kind of corrective way to get our body, like I said, prepared for what we do daily. Anyways, that is going to be all for the video today. If you did find some value in this functional training movement regiment workout, be sure to throw it a like as well as subscribe to the channel for more content similar to this in the future. I'm gonna go for my walk. There's tons of trails and whatnot for me to explore here. I got my body prepared, so I'm gonna do that. Until next time, make sure you are prioritizing and then you are optimizing for you. I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.